Hello, listeners. Happy Sunday. What's up, Tommy Blass?
What's going on, buddy?
Just another Sunday, man. Just another
Yeah,
Sunday.
sure is.
We had a really good interview last week.
I think it went very well. I was really happy with how it came out. Jason's a super cool guy. Shout out to Jason.
He really is. Thanks again for coming on. We really appreciate it. Hopefully you're listening to this episode. But I will say, Tom, we went a little bit out of our normal interview style. We actually went with someone that we haven't spoken to in a while. I'd say all of our other interviews we have a relationship with and we talk to them on a regular basis. Jason was our first interview that was with someone that we haven't spoken to for quite some time.
That's true. I think the enthusiasm of that comes out in the beginning of the interview, too. When the episode starts out, we're all like, hey, man, what's going on? And he's like, holy shit, what's up, guys? And I thought that was good.
Got us a little bit out of our comfort zone because, again, listeners, we are trying to do a show that is unscripted and pretty much improv throughout the entire series. However, in that case, there was a little bit more prep that Tom and I did, but we did do a lot of unscripted improv in that just to see where it went. So that kind of has been our style, and we're trying to keep it that way. I know in the future, we're going to get a couple of more guests on the show that we may have to prep a little bit more for. But in this case, we give ourselves a little bit of credit here because we did go out of our comfort zone and tried something a little bit different. And I have to say, it was definitely a successful interview with comedian actor for sure.
Yeah, man. I would say, though, if we're talking about comfort zone, I think I was more out of my comfort zone during the countdown episode because I was like, holy shit, I have these things, I have to remember them.
That's true. I love our countdown. I think that episode was very different. I don't think there's a lot of countdown podcasts that are like MTV and VH1 back in the day when they did their countdowns for best songs of X year or best Christmas songs. I mean, we actually did a countdown for 12 pieces of shit. Actually, wait a minute. 10 pieces of shit and 2 groups of pieces of shit. I don't think there is anything like that. That is one of its kind.
And, we definitely have to do a follow-up episode, too, because there have been so many suggestions that people have made to me afterwards. And it's like, damn, that's a good one. Damn, that's also a good one. So we definitely are going to revisit that format in the future, I think.
Dude, 100%. Can I actually tell you someone that I had no idea was a giant piece of shit is that guy, Dan Price?
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea there's something about him waterboarding his wife. Waterboarding. I mean, it's one thing to slap someone around, but waterboarding?
Shit. Jesus Christ. I didn't know he was that bad. I mean, I knew he was because he was that guy who he started that experiment where he gave everybody who worked at his company like 70 grand, like a salary of 70 grand a year to see if that actually, because there was a study that said that 70 grand a year was like the minimum people needed to be happy. He did that with sort of the intention of seeing if his employees would actually be happy that way. And surprise, surprise, when people make more money, they're generally happier. And now he's looked at as like a woke CEO, and he likes to comment on the likes of Jeff Bezos and everything else. So I guess it's important to remember he's not really a woke CEO. He's like, he might as well have been at Abu Ghraib.
Well, again, what you do is you do something and a bunch of news goes on it. And obviously when you search, you're going to see that, he's a CEO, who gives all this money to his employees and he took a pay cut. Like, that is great. But now, did you do this simply because you got caught and you had to come up with something to kind of change when people Google your name?
I guess I can give him credit for that because there's so many CEOs out there who don't do that. So, and, ultimately, he didn't have to. So,
his last name is kind of like one of those double entendres. Dan Price paid the price.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's an interesting guy because I never would have thought waterboarding. I mean, you usually just see like Alec Baldwin he just screams at her and demeans her. Like, imagine reading an article, Alec Baldwin waterboards his wife. Yeah. Which I wouldn't put it past him if he did. It'd be like, oh, Alec Baldwin.
Well, he's an asshole.
He does a good Orange Man impression, so he can waterboard somebody.
Yeah, one of the newspapers comes out with like, here's why waterboarding actually isn't as bad as yelling at somebody. Also, excuse my fucking stuffiness today. My fucking allergies have been off the fucking wall for the past like 2 weeks. And I want to say, I just want to shout out myself here quick, because I had a theory that the reason that everybody I knew was having allergy problems all of a sudden was because the beginning of, I think it was last week, when the wildfires were happening in Oregon, and it was like Oregon and parts of Canada, and the smoke was getting blown over the United States, and it reached New York. And so everything was like really hazy in New York, and it kind of looked like a normal haze, but like thicker. And it turns out that it was smoke from the wildfires. And now I saw an article on, it was Washington Post. I don't know, I'm too lazy to Google it, but essentially it said that there are upper respiratory and sinus problems all over the country now because of the smoke from the wildfires. So I had that theory first. Washington Post needs to give me credit.
It is kind of interesting that smoke from Oregon can make its way across the country and actually affect the people.
Dude, it just goes to show you like the magnitude of the fire. Like a wildfire in a forest is massive. It's like acres of trees and shit burning at the same time. I mean, I don't even know how people are able to figure out the amount of like smoke and shit that comes out of something like that, because I can't even comprehend that. Like acres of fire. I can't conceptualize that at all.
Who would have thought Howie Long's firestorm was a warning?
Yeah, Howie Long was ahead of his time.
He really was. I actually enjoyed that movie for like the shitty movie that it was.
You know, it was one of those 90s action thrillers that had like a $3 plot and it was fine. You know, it was what it was. It was entertaining.
And then they did like a crossover movie with Morgan Freeman, and they did Hard Rain, and Christian Slater was in it too. So it's just like, ooh, let's do Firestorm and Hard Rain. And it's like this year, been a lot of rain. Like these are two movies that should be brought back. I think there should be a reboot. There should be a reboot of Firestorm and Hard Rain. Like two shitty movies that are just like, you know what? These movies need to be acknowledged because firestorms are a problem. And so are the torrential rainstorms that are causing flooding all over the fucking place.
Oh my God. Yeah. The rain in New York has been absolutely ridiculous. I had another tree come down, and I've seen trees down everywhere and stuff. It's like all these microbursts, and they're very intense, but they end up lasting like a while. It's crazy.
Dude, it's like flooding, and you just see the rain, like it's rain that's thick. It's like thick rain. It's like big raindrops. It's not even like rain from 2 years ago. Have you noticed like a change in the rain? It's island weather in the East Coast.
Yeah, it's definitely the storms, I feel like, are more intense now than they were. You know, I'm sure a lot of people would argue with me about that, and that's fine, you know. But in terms of just the winters have been harsher, the summers have been stormier. I think in general, the climate in New York is taking a turn. And I don't know, like, you know, maybe it's a cyclical thing. I don't know. But I do think it's different now than it was when I was a kid.
You can even look at the temperature where it's cold today. It's cold in August. So I feel like the weather is almost shifting to where it gets warmer earlier and fall is coming slightly earlier. Now, I kind of got that vibe last year.
You know, I'll give it to you. Last year was a little cooler in August, I think. But I feel like September warmed up again, and it didn't actually get cold until like towards the end of November. And I've been saying for a few years now that it feels like the seasons are off a month, because you figure when I was a kid, I remember like 90-degree days in like May. I remember May was like the official beginning of spring, and that's when it started getting warm. And now you've still got 40-degree days in May.
Can I try to sound smart for a second? Is that called a paradigm shift?
Yeah, I guess that would be.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So what else is new?
Not much. I guess if you haven't heard, Amazon's earnings came out and they plummeted. Like there's a huge drop in their stock price, and I guess their earnings weren't as great. So they knew this in advance and decided to bring COVID back.
Is that right?
That is right. That is right. Because they realize that, oh my God, when people go out and are allowed to leave their homes, they're not spending as much on Amazon. So obviously, Amazon's end game here is to get people to stay back home. So I think they brought it back. I think Delta variant is caused by Amazon because they want people to stay home.
You think Jeff Bezos has a secret pharmaceutical lab on the moon?
I think when he shot that dick up in the sky, it sprayed the Delta variant.
Propelled by virus spray. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That'd be like a good James Bond plot.
And the villain won. Where the fuck was James Bond? Where were you, Elon Musk?
Yeah.
He should have put on his Iron Man suit and stopped that fucking dick from taking off.
Yeah.
But he failed.
Well, he's a piece of shit. What do you want to do?
I was thinking about like the superheroes and all that stuff. And it's like, if you think about it, Iron Man, billionaire, even Batman, right? Bruce Wayne, billionaire. They're trying to get you to love these superhero billionaires.
The idea behind Batman was that he was a rich guy who decided to use his power, I guess, for good. I mean, nowadays, I don't know that Batman would be looked at the same as he used to be. But essentially, he was the vigilante who did what, the cops couldn't do, what the law couldn't do. And he helped people. But, arguably, he did it in kind of a shitty way because, taking the law into your own hands is kind of a mixed bag. But essentially, he had good intentions. And the difference there is I don't feel like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or any of them, I don't think they really have good intentions for humanity. They seem very impartial to the fate of the average person. They really don't give a shit.
I do agree with that. I think the whole space thing is bullshit because it just seems weird that so many people are super excited for people to go into space for 10 minutes. And it's like 40 years ago, didn't we get all the way to the moon?
How is like 60 years ago?
Whatever, how long ago it was. Like, how is it two? But I'm like, it's 10 minutes. All that money for just 10 minutes there. And then you just come back down. Like unless we never really went to the moon. And I'm not going to be that person that says that we never went to the moon because I don't want to be in that bandwagon, but maybe we didn't go to the moon.
You think Kubrick shot it all in a Hollywood studio?
You never know, man. But don't you think if these people were spending billions of dollars to try to go to space, shouldn't you go somewhere? Why only go up so high? We did it before, right? Decades ago. Like you said, 60 years later. So the technology can't get you to the moon.
In like a third of the time.
A third of the time?
I wonder that myself, because if money really does, if that amount of money can really buy anything, how was it that the government, which is, looked at by a lot of people as inefficient, right? How was it that they and NASA, the government run agency, how were they all able to rally these people together and make all this shit happen with computers that fucking ran on vacuum tubes and whatnot? I looked into it, and it actually, a friend of ours actually educated me on it, because I didn't necessarily say that I didn't believe in the moon landing, but I said, I don't fault anybody for not believing it because it's kind of hard to imagine. And he actually pointed in the direction of some research and whatnot. And it was a massive nationwide effort to make that happen. I mean, it took a lot of people. It took a lot of they contracted MIT to build the computer for the rocket. And it was the first computer of its kind that was able to make decisions in real time. And that's actually where the phrase real time comes from, was that computer. There was so much going on with that. And it's insane to think that now, 50, 60 years later, we can't do that again. Is it because we're all really fractured as a nation, or is it because we don't want to spend that kind of money on it? Because it was kind of personal between, the United States and the Soviets, who got to the moon first. So there was kind of a rally together to do it. But
you kind of now have 3 billionaires that are kind of have a race to space themselves. So, yeah. I mean, you'd almost think that we're trying to accomplish this great thing. Maybe the 3 of them, rather than measuring the biggest spaceship in the room, they come together and put all of their resources together then to get to the moon. Even though I really don't care. I'm never going to go to space. I'm going to say it right now. I'm not impressed at all that we would go to space. And honestly, if 2 years from now, it turns out that Elon Musk or Richard Branson were able to get to the moon, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, that's so cool. I'm so cool. There's a tear coming. I can't stand when people start crying over that is amazing. They went to the moon. I can't stand those people. Like, well, you didn't go. If you went, sure, I can see you crying because of how beautiful it is. But to see somebody else go to the moon and you're going to tear jerk a little bit, like, come on.
Maybe that's just it. Maybe you actually just illustrated the point there. If private industry does this, private industries compete. So, private companies compete. So it's inherently going to be something where they're going to try and do it and exclude other companies from being a part of it. Whereas it was sort of a banded effort together in the 60s to do it. So maybe that's the point. Maybe we all have to work together if we really want to get to the moon again and make it an efficient way to get there and make it a feasible thing for like people to do on like a weekend or whatever. I mean, I wouldn't do it, but yeah, if we want to make it better, we have to come together and work together to do it.
But you know why that's not going to happen? Because of ego. All these assholes now are going in the history books.
Right. This is definitely the second round of robber barons in the country.
Yeah, this is all ego. It has nothing to do with making this happen. And, ooh, look, we made it to space. It's ego. Mm-hmm. I did it first. I did it second. I did it third. Yeah. And they're going to go in the history books now as people who were able to go into space during a time where the country is in complete fucking wreck. Like, that's great. You got to space and half the people, they're about to get evicted. It's just, this is great. You know, you have these people racing to space and the eviction ban is now, I guess, lifted. So now people are going to be losing their place to live because these slumlords are not going to give people time. You know, the ones that are bitching and complaining are the ones that have many properties. I don't feel, and again, I'm putting myself in a weird place because I am in the business of real estate and mortgages, but I do not feel bad for the people that own a dozen or more investment buildings and apartments who didn't get their rent. I actually don't feel bad for them. I feel bad for the landlords who maybe own one investment property, 2 or 3 investment properties, who did not get rent from the person that just took advantage of not being able to pay rent. Because at the end of the day, what's going to end up happening, the asshole with 20 apartment buildings is going to swoop up that 2-family investment property from the one landlord who was lucky enough to actually get their hands on a property but couldn't afford it during a time when they weren't able to make those payments.
I think you also got to worry that the hedge funds are part of this decision because that's what they're doing is buying up like residential properties that are like 2 and 3 and 4 families. And then they're trying to buy up and invest in fucking property now. And so a fucking hedge fund could be your landlord. We talked about that in another episode. This is an opportunity for them to really capitalize on that.
And they will. They will. And it's not going to be covered. I mean, you're going to see the foreclosure piece and all these companies picking up these multifamilies. And then they're going to own them because what's going to end up happening that Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan Chase, all those big banks, when they take these assets this time, they know what to do this time around during foreclosures. It's not going to be like the post-financial crisis in 2011 where they have an overabundance of vacant properties or foreclosures and they're not going to know what to do with it. So they're selling these things at ridiculously low prices. They're going to hold them this time and then they're going to sell them for top dollar to investment funds.
Yeah.
And what's going to end up happening is housing is going to be owned by larger corporations and LLCs. I think that's what's going to happen. Again, I could be wrong, but I feel the eviction ban, I don't support it. I don't support the lift. However, I think for the small people who got screwed over by this, I guess it's good for them. But for the big guys, I personally don't care.
Well, and I've seen propaganda in the newspapers too about this, and I'm sure it's the hedge funds are behind it. But I've seen a lot of articles lately that were like, oh, you know, owning property is stupid. You might as well just rent. And it's like, you know, I'm seeing a lot of articles like that where people, oh yeah, you know, what was the one? I'm trying to remember how it was phrased, but it was like, America should be a nation of renters, and that's okay. You know, they're trying, I think, to normalize it so that, when hedge funds and banks and everything own all this property and will only rent it to you. I mean, that could be some sort of dystopian future that's not far away.
And that's why I guess the rent control piece, you can play devil's advocate with yourself if you support rent control or don't support rent control, but in a sense where corporations own, let's just say, half the rental properties in one town, then I absolutely support rent control, because if they see the town popping, that would mean then the corporation can just lift up the rent. They can afford to not get rent from maybe a quarter of the tenants and evict them, and then raise the rent gradually. Whereas at least if there is rent control, these corporations can't do something like that. Let's just say you own 2 investment properties in Kingston, right? I feel I support that. Okay. But I don't support the guy who owns 50 rental properties, and now, but not just 50 single family homes or 50 2 or 3 residential units. I mean, the guy that may own 50, 20 apartment buildings or 10 families, you know what I mean? Like, they're all commercial apartment buildings. Those are the people that come off a little slumlordish, and they don't take into account the specific situation. I think the whole mortgage piece was not handled correctly by our government. I think they tried to come up with something so fast that they really didn't figure this one out the right way, because renters who did continue to work, they opted not to pay their rent. And that's where, yes, they technically found a loophole not to pay the rent, but the bill should have been written up where you have to show that you were laid off, and everyone who laid off people should have given everyone a document. If you're going to go mass layoffs during this and you're not going to be able to be open during this, they should have been required to give a certain document to their employees, small business or big business. And then that document should have been provided to the landlord. And then the landlord during tax season should have been able to have provided that document. Now, whether it be a primary residence or their rental properties, the mortgages should have been pushed out. But then you would have had to show proof that you had tenants that were in fact not paying rent, because then you also had people who were still working go on forbearance.
Right. I think another push behind this is the mortgage companies are ending a lot of forbearance plans. So,
and the forbearance plans to get out of it were kind of bullshit, because they forced modifications on some people, and modifications are not good.
Yeah, modification hurts your credit, doesn't it?
It doesn't necessarily affect your credit to bring it down, because I don't think they're allowed to negatively affect your report with the whole forbearance thing. However, on your credit report, if it says modification, or if they see a modification on your credit report, they can have an overlay, which is a rule or an internal guideline where they don't have to technically do a refinance. Or if you wanted to sell and buy a new property, they don't have to give you a loan again because you modified. So modifying does kind of screw you. But again, every lender is different. There may be a waived overlay and they would do it. But go to Chase with a modification on your credit report, they're not going to do your loan. They're going to be like, you got to wait. This needs to get removed.
How long does something like that stay on your credit report?
I think the modification stays on there for like forever. Like it's a modified loan, but then there's the date of the modification, and then a new lender goes off the date of that modification. So like, let's just say you modified in 2021, and don't quote me on this. I think the rule is either you have to wait a year or wait 2 years, depending on the program. So they would look at the date the modification was actually reported on the credit report. So let's just say you modified October 2020. You may have to wait until November 2021 to refinance.
Huh. No shit.
And so it doesn't hurt your score. You could have an 800 credit score, but you have a modification on your mortgage.
Right.
And so that fucks you.
It's still a sort of scarlet letter on your credit report there.
Correct. That's why a lot of people saw the refinance rates going super low, but they also went on forbearance and they're like, oh, I need to take advantage of this. You pull their credit, you see forbearance. It's like, hey, you can't refinance. They're like, well, why? I'm still working. Well, you did the shitty thing of going on forbearance. So you're stuck.
Yeah.
Now, in some cases, if they were multifamily properties and you had tenants that weren't paying rent, I would say that's a fair reason to go on the forbearance if you needed to. And listen, there are some people that needed to do it anyway because other expenses came up, or a loss of a job, or a layoff where unemployment may have been delayed because of that, and it causes you to miss a payment. So you might as well go on forbearance rather than missing a payment. Every situation's different. But what I'm trying to say is there are people out there that were making 200 grand a year. They didn't get laid off or anything. And they were on forbearance because they're like, what do I need to make a mortgage payment for? Those are the people I'm kind of like, they shouldn't have been able to have done it, but they found a loophole.
I know a couple people who did that strategically too. What they did was they went on forbearance and then they took the money that they were paying their mortgage with and they put it towards like credit card debt or something like that and paid all that off. And then once that was all paid off, they resumed with the mortgage payments. Because what some of the companies were doing was they were just tacking on, like Wells Fargo, for example, was tacking on the payments that you were on forbearance for like 3 months, let's say. They were putting that 3 months on the back end of the loan. So it's not like the full amount of those 3 payments was immediately due. So some people were able to benefit in that respect. And I guess that's not a bad thing. As long as you were doing something productive with it and you weren't just fucking not paying because like, ooh, I don't have to pay my mortgage. But
it's
also
it just wasn't thought about enough. I just feel like you have all those fucking assholes in one room trying to put a bill together. I mean, not one person was like, this might fuck up a little bit like a year from now.
Yeah.
This might be a thing we should make. I mean, really what should have happened was, because again, there's so many moving parts. There's property taxes, there's school tax, there's so much, and it all gets pushed. And then you're having issues with paying
with escrow.
With escrow. Yeah, there's escrow problems.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
There's so many issues there. They should have figured it out better. There is so much money. Maybe what we could have done was not give a country like $2 billion to buy weapons, and figured out a way to allocate that money towards the people of America to figure out their situation. Like, we can be selfish. We're allowed to be. This is our country. It's our fucking taxes, right? Like, I don't give a fuck about the Middle East. I'm going to say it and giving them a bunch of money. How about we kind of just keep it for ourselves? Let's also not bomb them either. Let's save money on the bombing of those countries.
I think that would be a good idea too.
So we don't bomb something for maybe we should maybe we should go on our own forbearance. Let's not bomb something for 6 months.
Yeah. Oh God. One of the things that, and I wonder if it's the same with the military because I don't know, but I know, for example, with like school districts, right? If a school district gets an allotment, however often annually or something like that from the, whatever the governing body is that's over them, and they get a budget for a year, let's say, if they're able to do whatever they need to do and they come in under budget, their budget gets cut the following year, right? And that incentivizes them to just spend and spend, because the more they spend, the bigger their budget's going to be next year. They have to max it out so that they can get a bigger budget the following year. Is that not crazy? Like, does that make any sense?
Well, that's the problem with a company doing very well in 2020, and now they're trying to beat it in 2021. No one's just looking at the picture that 2020 was a fucking giant pandemic, and we did very well because we were deemed an essential company. But now that the world is opening back up in 2021, we need to make sure we maximize profits to beat 2020.
Right. It's the whole concept of just unlimited growth. It's impossible.
It was not a normal year. It was not a normal year. And the problem is that everyone's treating it like, well, this was a normal year. We had substantial growth. Now we got to beat 2020. You can't. You have to stop. But dude, that's what they're trying to do. That's why they're not raising wages, because they'd rather have people underpaid, overworked so that they can beat 2020. And now we're going to be going into 2022 and we're going to be in the same fucking situation again. Because now they're going to try to beat 2021. We need to accept, we need to understand, and it's part of capitalism, right? There's got to be years where there are outliers. And I don't think these big companies are looking at 2020 as an outlier, because they were all paid so much money, especially the high-ups. The high-ups were paid so much money, Tom, that now they're like, I need to make this money again in 2021 because I bought a fucking yacht that has its own fucking yacht.
Well,
I hope he fucking dies, man.
He's a piece of shit.
don't even think we have to say his name.
Yeah, no. Let me ask you this then. So if all that is true and the companies are absolutely like dead set on beating revenues from last year. Now I'm going to preface this by saying that I don't think it's fake news, and I do think it is, a serious issue. But do you think then that maybe these companies would be behind the push to really sensationalize the Delta outbreak? Do you think
Absolutely.
that maybe
Put your mask on and stay home, man, because let me tell you, it means restaurants, people are going to go back to fast food. Guess who is allowed to stay open? All of these fast food restaurants.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah,
now people are going back out.
are all essential.
Yeah, man, because now people are going out to restaurants again, and I'm sure the line at McDonald's, the line at KFC, it's probably cut in half now. So they're going to want people to go back home so they can't go out to eat. Uber Eats made so much money this past year because people were ordering to them. Now people are going back out. I think this Delta outbreak, whether it's as serious as it's trying, the media is trying to make it, it is going to be sensationalized to be a big deal. But Fauci even said it, there's not going to be a lockdown this time because you know what? I think this country's strong enough to say, go fuck yourself. You're not shutting me down this time, which I fully support.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think the effects of the lockdown were more harmful on small business than anything else. And I think that we shouldn't have one this time. But that said, when it comes to the lockdown and everything else, I do think we shouldn't have a lockdown. But also, yeah, I think that whatever the precautions are that are given out to people to take against the spread of the Delta variant, I think that the media is going to make this thing into a way bigger deal than it is. Even if it is a big deal, they're going to make it a tremendous deal. And if it's a tremendous deal, they're going to make it a cataclysmic deal, right? And then you wonder why people are so hesitant to trust anything in terms of, what's being reported on, the fact that the science has to, the actual numbers from the science have to be amended from time to time because that's how science works. But people are going to look at stuff like that and going to say, this is all a farce, and as much as I disagree, I can't blame anybody for thinking that way because it's all being reported to you with an agenda. So it's hard sometimes, it turns a lot of people off immediately. And I can understand that. It's like something's being shoved down your throat and you say, you know what, fuck you. Like, I'm just going to do the opposite of this then. It's like a knee-jerk reaction. And like I said, I don't agree with it, but I absolutely understand why people would think that. So I'm hoping there's a little more responsible reporting this time around if it does get to that level. But I highly doubt that'll be the case.
I'm all for certain precautions. And the one thing I think we did learn from the first year of this, masks in the food world should be mandatory moving forward. I went to the grocery store to get cold cuts, and everyone behind there, I'm assuming vaccinated because they had their masks off. But the girl who cut my ham, I don't know why that sounds funny.
That is.
The girl who cut my ham, as she was slicing it, put her mouth in her arm and coughed. And I said to myself, I'm like, you should be wearing a fucking mask. I'm like, she just coughed. But when you cough, you still spit. I mean, I spit when I talk. I fully acknowledge that. I, unfortunately, sometimes spit when I talk. And I feel anyone in food, that cough, what if she had a cold, right? Not even COVID. Yeah. But what if she just had a cold and she coughed on my ham?
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's a big deal. And then I go to the bagel place to I got a dozen bagels today, and the girl coughed. It's just it's a thing. People cough. And I think people should just wear masks if you're in the food industry, whether COVID is if COVID's a problem or not. I feel that during the winter, I didn't get the normal sick that I normally get during the winter, which is just a common cold. I didn't get one last year because I was wearing a mask, and everyone dealing with the food behind the counter, getting a coffee, everyone was wearing masks. I also think social distancing is maybe 6 feet's a lot. I think people, if you don't know each other, just stay 3 feet away from one another. I don't know why we need to be like, we're first off, we're not Europe. Okay. This is America. we don't like to be rubbing shoulders with people we don't know. So the same bagel shop that I go to, right? It's a pretty popular joint where I am, and there's always a line all the way down. And they have a 2-door operation where you open up one, there's like a very, very small 3x3 foot section like lobby, and then you go into the actual bagel shop. There's a line. And when you go into that little 3x3 section, you're still about 4 people away from putting your order in. And so every time I go in there, somebody seems to follow me in too. And I do call them out, and I'm like, can you just go outside? I don't want to be next to you in here. Whether COVID was a thing or not, that lobby area is meant for you to kind of just be by yourself in. I'm not friendly today. Like, it's Sunday fucking morning. I'm not looking to make conversation with anybody. So like, just go outside, because whether you're next to me, rubbing my shoulder, or outside 20 feet away, you're not going to put your order in any quicker.
That's true.
And I feel like people need to understand that, it's like a line at, I don't want to give Starbucks credit. It's like a line at the local coffee shop. No matter what, whether you're bumping shoulders with somebody or 6 feet apart, you're going to get your coffee in the same amount of time.
Well, then you have to worry that somebody's going to cut you in line if there's too much space. They're going to think maybe you're not in line.
That's why I think 3 feet. Nobody's going to jump in, because then everyone's 1.5 feet away from each other.
Yeah. Yeah. If you cut someone in line when they're 3 feet away, you're a real dick. But I think even 6 feet, like, you could tell when somebody's in line. Like, and if you can't tell, then you ask. But like, don't just assume that somebody's just standing there not doing anything and they're not waiting for somebody. I've had that happen to me at the local coffee chain around here. A guy stepped in front of me in the line, and I was like 6 feet away from the person at the register, and the guy stepped in front of me. And then he wants to get aggro when I tell him, I was like, dude, what the fuck, man? I'm in line. Like, the line's behind me. And he was like, oh, well, I mean, Jesus Christ. Like, why don't you just wait outside? And I was like, you fucking serious, bro? But yeah, so that happens too. But I do agree. I think line etiquette needs to be a little more public knowledge in this country. I think maybe we should have a class on that.
You know, what's also interesting is that, I'm not going to say which retail place it was, but even though the mask mandate is coming back, they already received all of the equipment in advance to prep for it. So it goes to tell you that, like, I think in some of these bigger corporations, like, the fact that they sent everything already, you already knew they were going to make that. It sucks that these big corporations are getting the information before us.
Yeah. And then you wonder how senators make so much money on the stock market. You don't think everybody at the top levels there is all colluding together?
They absolutely are. They absolutely are.
Yeah. I mean, it's been demonstrated, right? It's not like it's a conspiracy theory at this point. Like, it happened last time and it'll happen this time. In fact, I think it's already happening this time. I just saw a thing on a bunch of senators who got caught insider trading. So it's like, they're all in cahoots.
You know how they get held to a certain standard with health insurance, I guess, like they get their own special health insurance for being senators and all that stuff. Oh, yeah. I feel that if you commit a crime as a politician, there should be a punishment tier above the regular person. That if you are an elected official and you do something wrong, there should be punishments that are even worse than for the common person, just because you took an oath.
Right. You shouldn't get any kind of special treatment. I mean,
no, what I mean is, let's just say I get caught insider trading. Let's just say my punishment's 5 years in jail and a $50,000 fine, right? Mm-hmm. I think a senator or anyone that's an elected official that got caught insider trading because they are, in fact, an elected official, it should be double. It should be 10 years in prison and double the fine, because they're held to a certain standard, because they are, in fact, an elected official who took an oath. Me, I'm just an asshole investor who saw an opportunity and grabbed it. But I think an elected official, on the other hand, because they are held to a specific merit, they should be held accountable, but double, to really show that we take very serious our elected officials and their punishments if they do a crime. Their punishment should be more.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. So in keeping with the fact that we've established that members of the government get preferential treatment, I actually have a tirade this week. We haven't done it in a while, but I want to bring this up because it pisses me off. In 2005, there was a bill passed, for which President Biden, then Senator Biden, voted. And he was kind of in a shitty place to vote for it, I guess, but he voted for it nonetheless. It was called the Bankruptcy Abuse Prevention and Consumer Protection Act. And so this bill was trying to make it more difficult to declare bankruptcy. I guess back then the criteria for declaring bankruptcy was a little loose and the process was a little too easy. And that's how a lot of people declared bankruptcy back then, in sort of a strategic way. And the process was kind of abused. So they cracked down on it and they make it harder to declare, right? And one of the things they made it so that you couldn't do was you couldn't declare bankruptcy because of student loans. You couldn't get student loans discharged by declaring a bankruptcy. It could only be discharged if not doing so would impose, quote, an undue hardship, right? And that's one of those terms I feel like that is deliberately put in there so that they can, it's just a foggy term that they did that on purpose so that it doesn't really have a strict definition. So one of the things that was part of that bill every time a bill gets passed, everybody adds little bullshit lines to it in order to make it so that they can vote for it. And one of the things that was passed in that bill was that the children of government employees, senators and congresspeople, I think it's not like everybody who's a government employee, but senators and congresspeople, they were able to declare bankruptcy on student debt. And that right there shows how little they give a shit about you. They care about protecting their own, and that's it. So when they pass a bill like that, and the student debt crisis was already becoming, it was taking shape at that point, and it was very clear that in the future, on the horizon, there was going to be an issue with this. And what do? They deliberately make it harder to get rid of that. And that was something that directly affected pretty much everybody in our generation. So in terms of when people in Congress, people in the Senate make votes, just remember that they are always, 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 first and foremost, going after their own interest and protecting their own. They don't give a shit about you. If you're benefited by a bill, that's just a happy accident because they truly do not give a shit. And the fact that they can make it so that their own kids can do this and you can't and your kids can't, right now, you should realize that is bullshit. And the fact that they're trying to propose this new bill now where they're gonna change the rules around it. I mean, that's good. That is a step in the right direction for sure. But just remember, before you support it wholeheartedly, take a look into it because it is very possible that there's going to be other bullshit in that bill. And, there's going to be little side notes on the bottom that are going to be bullshit, and they're probably going to adversely affect you and directly benefit members of Congress, members of Senate, and the higher ups. So just be wary. Don't ever, when somebody in government or private industry either, whenever they propose something that sounds really, really good, and it sounds like they hit the nail on the head and they're actively taking the steps forward to approach and fix a problem or attempt to fix it, just remember that there is always, always an ulterior motive there. And maybe it's not so bad. Maybe it's something that benefits them and doesn't hurt you, but you always have to look and make sure that there's something in it that is not absolutely shitty. So that's my tirade today. Just be wary whenever anybody tries to sell you something good, because usually it's too good to be true. Usually there's something in there that it just kind of creeps in insidiously right towards the end. Like, oh, by the way, I want to add this little amendment in there. And it undermines the whole positive connotation of the bill in the first place.
You don't become a politician to stay broke.
That's true.
You become a politician because at the end of the day, you want something and you're going to do what you got to do to get it, whether it be an amendment in a specific bill that's coming out or have an opportunity to invest in something and get inside news that the regular person doesn't get so that you're able to strike it rich through trades.
Yeah. I mean, it's, again, in Biden's defense, just so people don't think that I'm, taking one side of this issue or the other, I'm telling it to you from the viewpoint of somebody who thinks that it's shitty and that everybody in Congress is an elitist who is shitty. But that said, it was Republican president, Republican Congress. The bill was going to pass anyway, and Biden supposedly, according to him, he said he made it better. Now, what he did to make it better, is up for debate, I suppose. But suffice it to say that he did vote for it, and he said, "Oh, I didn't like the rest of the bill." Well, if you didn't fucking like it, why did you vote for it? I mean, like, okay, if it was going to pass anyway, what the fuck does your fucking vote matter? like at least you could go on record as going down swinging. But that's just a policy of a centrist, like someone like Biden. He's just gonna,
America eats its babies, man. It's a system that is set up to make sure everyone gets what they want at the end of the day. And guess what? The domino effect made Biden president.
Yeah, it's true. You look at the things, the guy, and, do I think Biden is the worst person in the world? No. But I do think he's a career politician, and it's worth taking a look at his record and realizing that he's kind of shitty. I mean, he voted for the Iraq war. He supported pretty much every bad thing that's happened so far. He was right there with Hillary Clinton when she coined the term super predators to refer to African-American urban youth. And he also, I saw this video the other day and I thought it was pretty funny. He had this weird hard-on for like cracking down on rave culture. He thought like techno and rave culture was like going to fucking destroy America, which I thought was
really
weird. Yeah.
Is that
there.
new or is that old?
No, it was way, I think it was in like 95 or something. It was like right when rave culture was getting real big and you had all the EDM and stuff coming out. Yeah, he's there testifying before Congress. And he sounded like, you remember the satanic panic of the 80s when people were, oh, the devil worshipers are going to get our kids and we have to take a stance against this. And it's like, it was made into this big thing that wasn't an issue. It sounded exactly like that. Like that's what he was trying to do. He was like, "This rape culture is gonna make all these kids just wear neon clothes and dance under black lights and do drugs." It's
I feel like if he accidentally walked into a rave today, he'd have a seizure.
Yeah, he wouldn't make it out, I don't think. He just walks into the rave and like goes up to like the DJ booth and just starts talking like he's addressing a normal crowd.
Oh my God, right? He looks so old. He literally reminds me of my dad like 3 days before he died.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy. I was talking with someone Wait, you almost got that one by me, God damn it. Oh, that one caught me off guard. But it's funny, though. You look at someone like him, right? You look at someone like Bill Clinton, and these guys are in their 70s, and they look fucking rough. And then you look at people like fucking Keith Richards and Mick Jagger and fucking even the guys from Aerosmith are in their 70s. And like comparatively, given the lives that they've led, I mean, look at Sammy Hagar, for Christ's sake. He's like 74 right now. And you look at him compared to someone like Biden, dude, Sammy Hagar looks like he found the fountain of youth. I mean, now, how is it that somebody like Sammy Hagar, who fucking partied, dude, he for like 3 solid decades, man, he was probably fucked up just the entire time. How does someone like him end up in his 70s looking like 10 years younger than someone like Bill Clinton, say, who looks like he looks like a lich at this point. He looks like a fucking a cadaver that's been reanimated.
I don't know. I guess when you drink the blood of babies, there's an after effect to it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Dude, I do have to bring it up because I wanted to say it last week. I always thought the theory of drinking the blood of babies was like, where did this come from? It is absolutely insane. But when Joe Biden, the fact that he said it on 2 interviews is like kind of making me think about it now. Like, why bring it up? Why bring it up? Even if like people made jokes about it, it's like somebody kind of saying that they made the joke that, ooh, I kissed my cousin once. All right. Obviously, you're just kidding. And then 3 months go by and you bring it up again at a party. Like, I made out with my cousin that one time. And it's just like, you did, didn't you? No. But I'm like, you said it twice. You don't bring it up twice. It's one of those things. You bring it up once. It's a joke. Haha. Everyone forgets about it. But once you bring it up a second time, it's just like, well, wait a minute. You've definitely made out with your cousin then.
Like once no one's talking about it. Yeah. Just drop it. I don't know. Yeah, there's some things you can own, and then some things you should just leave alone.
And that's away. Like something that goes in a box. It's like you don't bring it up ever. Like, it's clearly not true. But dude, if he brings it up again, like in the next 6 months, like he has like a 6-month window. Don't bring it up again, Joe. Because if you bring it up again in the next 6 months, I do think we need to then look into it, because it's just not something you bring up. It's like you don't bring it up ever. Now, if somebody else asks him about it, he should just be like, walk away. It's like an interview when like you're a sportscaster asking a question to a losing team. So how do you feel about losing? Next question. Because obviously they're upset. That's a stupid ass question. So if somebody brings it up, he just needs to be like, next question. You got to paint it as something that ridiculous where you're not even going to talk about it. Right. But if you actually start talking about it, it's something that's like, well, why? Why are you actually taking it serious?
Yeah, he doesn't. I don't think he quite has the charisma at this point, or maybe ever, to make something like that into an actually funny joke. Like, I think Obama could probably have done it, because Obama was real slick. I think he could have been like, oh, like, you know, he's at like a rally or something and someone gives him a baby and it's in his hands and he's like, oh, what's this one's blood type? Oh, yeah, that's a typo. That's not me. Here you go. Take it back.
I actually wouldn't think Obama would drink a baby's blood. He actually comes off kind of normal. But, dude, honestly, true or false, does Hillary look like the type of person who drank blood? I'm going to be like, yeah.
Yeah, I think if someone told her that would win an election, I don't think she'd discount it entirely.
Did you ever see that one picture of her and Bill where Bill looked extremely skinny and like he hasn't slept for days?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what they say. She's sucking the soul out of him.
I actually don't think it's her sucking the soul out of him. I just don't think he's had baby blood for like 6 months.
Maybe.
It's just so out of this world, right? It's like an out of this world theory.
None of these, like Hillary Clinton especially, didn't help herself by going to this fucking spirit party thing that came out during the election. And there's photographs of her there. And it's like this big pagan ritual. And they got this fucking bathtub full of blood and all this shit. And like they're doing all this weird, like occultist looking shit. And I get it. It's a party. It's a theme party, whatever. Sometimes theme parties get weird, I suppose, if you're rich or whatever. Like I can imagine that anyway. Like that doesn't seem entirely far-fetched to me, but it plays into the bigger problem that the left has in this country with optics. Nobody seems to ever be able to anticipate how something's going to look. So it's like, you know, you don't think that maybe you just don't get photographed at that party. Like maybe you show up with like one of those fucking what the fuck were they called? Like those Victorian fucking masks. Fuck, I forget what it's fucking called. But like show up with a mask or something. It's a fucking pagan party. Like I don't know. Show up with some kind of fucking I don't know. Don't go.
They all wore one. They all wore one in what's it called? Eyes Wide Shut. So you can wear one to your little pagan party.
Yeah. God damn it! What is that called? That's gonna piss me off.
I'm gonna say it wrong.
A masquerade.
Yeah.
Like I just or don't go. Like, hey, I'm not feeling good. I'm not gonna make it to your fucking pagan spirit party. Like
I'm running for president. I really shouldn't do this.
Oh, this is going to get the evangelical Republican base of like the fucking Midwest on my side. Like, are you kidding? And not to mention, this was a woman who was around during the fucking, a lot of the moral panics of the late 80s, early 90s. And she was a big proponent of like, oh, well, the family structure needs to be kept intact. I mean, she was homophobic. She was fucking super, and she's since recanted. So I'll give her that. But, she's somebody who was there for a lot of those moral panics when Tipper Gore fucking did the whole thing with the parental advisory warning on music. She was right there with her. Like, oh yeah, I think that's terrible. And here you are at this fucking party where everybody's doing weird shit. It's like, what are you? Are you a moral person or are you not? Like, you can't just do whatever you think is going to fucking pass, is going to get you in the public's good graces that day, and then do something completely contradictory to that a couple of years later and think that nobody's going to be able to fucking put the pieces together. Like, do you not have continuity in your brain? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's something else. But at the end of the day, Tom, we are going back to a little bit of these abnormalities, and the mask's got to go back on.
Mask on. Fuck it. Mask on.
Fuck it. Mask on. So listeners, listen, be safe out there. Put that mask on. Social distance. Don't be shy to tell someone that's up your ass to back the fuck up.
Because that's your space. Got to claim it.
Got to claim it. Right. Well,
So,
Tommy,
and,
I
yeah.
guess we should let our listeners go because we are trying to keep this less than an hour. And who knows, after editing, maybe we actually did it.
Maybe. Who knows?
Till next week, listeners.
Have a happy Sunday and a good weekend.
You know what I loved about the last week's episode was when we were talking about the music and when we said, well, here it comes and then it goes on.
Yeah. That was good.
The ending was perfect.